Are you tired of all the baloney? Well, you know what you need. Straight talk with Jack Graham. So make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. Now, here is Jack Graham.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Jack Graham and another video. Thank you for taking some time to be here, and I hope you enjoy this short video on, I think, an underrated bunch of musicians we'll get to in a second. But again, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. If you like what you see, please subscribe and like and all of that good stuff. Today I want to talk about the Jazz Crusaders. And some of you may not have heard of this group. I remember when I was, let's see, I had to be 13 years old or so, listening to WRBR in New York or WLIB in New York. Both played jazz. 24 hours at the time, if you can believe that, on FM. I remember hearing this group, and I said, "Who is this?" Many of the I guess you would call them hard-bop groups, like Art Blakey and many of the groups that recorded on Blue Note. They featured rhythm section along with a front line. Front line usually consisted of either 2 or 3 horns, trumpet and tenor, and trombone in the Blakey band. Sometimes trumpet, tenor, and alto. It could be Cannonball Adderley's band. It could be Blakey. It could be many of the bands that recorded on Blue Note and those folks back in the '60s. But I heard this band, and there's a certain quality to hearing a tune played, with trumpet and tenor goes very well. Could be the same notes, could be harmonized, but when they play the same notes, boy, if you get that right, and of course many of the Blue Note groups did that back in the 50s and certainly in the 60s. It was a great sound, and sometimes a trumpet, tenor, and alto. But that trumpet and tenor sound, you hear it a lot in the early, Joe Henderson records on Blue Note, and many of the others. What a great sound! Miles, of course, in his bands. When I heard this band on the radio, it was a voicing using trombone and tenor. And I said, "Man, that sounds great. Who is this?" And when the announcement came on, it was the Jazz Crusaders. I said, "Jazz Crusaders? I never heard of the Jazz Crusaders." But did a little research and bought some records. And it turns out that they became one of my favorite bands up until the change in the band. And we'll get to that here shortly. But these musicians all came out of Texas, being Joe Sample on piano, Wynton Felder on tenor, Wayne Henderson on trombone, Stix Hooper on drums. And I think they all went to college together in Texas, and they formed a band back then. I think it was called the Swingsters, if I remember right, back in the 50s. And then in the 60s, they formed a group called the Modern Jazz Sextet, which later went on to be the Crusaders when they all moved to Los Angeles. I think they were playing a lot of R&B, that kind of stuff in Texas, but they really wanted to, try to make a name in the jazz world, as they were all, jazz-oriented minds. So they moved to LA, and they recorded a record that just has been reissued in the Tone Poet series. this is why this motivated me to do this record. I've got the original on Pacific Jazz. This is the reissue that just came out. It's called Freedom Suite. I hope I can hold that up correctly for you. There you go. Just been reissued on Tone Poet. Just picked this up last week. Kevin Gray, obviously. Kevin I Never Sleep Gray on Coherent did the mastering on this. And of course, this is Joe Harley supervised. Hart and Andy Graham, great sounding record. I don't need to go into that. RTI pressing, the whole bit. But, it kind of, rekindled my desire to listen to some Jazz Crusaders, which I've been doing the last couple days. This is a great record. It's out, it's available, and maybe you should stream it or pick it up. I know you'll like it. They played in a style that was hard bop, but they also mixed in tunes, some Beatles tunes and some pop tunes in really interesting arrangements. With that, again, that tenor and trombone sound. But most of their, in fact, almost all their tunes, whether they're originals or they're remakes of Beatles tunes or other stuff, were arranged. I bet they were listening to what Max Roach and Clifford Brown were doing back in the 50s in L.A., where they would, if you listen to their records on in Marcy, those tunes were not just blowing tunes. They were arranged really, really interestingly. And I bet this group, the Jazz Crusaders, listened to a lot of that because tunes are arranged just really a marvelous sound and really good players. Many of them went on to do other things. Joe Sample, for example, went on to play with many, many pop groups as a sideman. He was on the Asia Steely Dan record. I think Wayne Henderson was on the Pretzel Logic record. And they all went on to do other things other than the Jazz Crusaders because they were great musicians and just really polished. But many of their recordings were done live back in the 60s at the Lighthouse. My favorite of all the Lighthouse recordings is Lighthouse 68 on Pacific Jazz. They recorded, I bet you they recorded a bunch. I think they recorded 15 or 16 records on Pacific Jazz. This is the original Pacific Jazz label. These are still available. I think you could probably find them in good shape. I think they're getting a little pricey, but they're really well. This is ST-20131. Back in 1968, came out in 69. And there's some great tunes on here. There's a couple blues tunes on here. Again, Impressions, the John Coltrane tune that he made famous. Eleanor Rigby is on here. And then some tunes that were, this is in 1968, so this is shortly before they kind of started playing more in a soul R&B type setting. We'll talk about that in a minute, but this is a great record, Lighthouse 68. We've got some CDs that are available too, and I'm sure you can find these. This is the best of the Jazz Crusaders on Pacific Jazz. There's a compilation that was done, and I know there's a Japanese version of this that's really, really good. I don't have that, but I do have the complete live at the Lighthouse, 1962. I think it's borderline to the 68 recording, but it's a great record. And they used a myriad of bass players. They used Jimmy Bond, LA studio guy, on the Freedom Suite, Freedom Sounds record that just came out. And here they used Victor Gaskin. And Victor Gaskin, man, he worked with Cannonball and a whole bunch of guys. Great player. So they were really picky on who they worked with. But this is a really good record. The complete live at the Lighthouse, 1962. And then they they did their thing in the 60s successfully. Um, Again, made a lot of records, 16, maybe 17 records for Pacific Jazz. Um, for one reason or another, and maybe it was financial, I heard one of the players, one of their children, developed. I thought it was leukemia. I'm not sure about this, but and they needed the money, so they decided to join the trend back in the late '60s, going into the '70s, of R&B in a soul type setting, and and they recorded many of those. The only record that I own in that setting, and it's really well recorded, and it's a real groovy record, and it's called Old Socks, New Shoes. This actually made, I think, the Billboard charts, under, I think it was 90 something on the Billboard charts back in 1970 when this came out. I remember I was at college and I saw Crusaders had a new record. I said, well, let me try picking this up. When I played, I said, well, what are these guys doing? Man, they were such great players. But well done, well recorded. To me, I don't enjoy it as much as the kind of the hard bop stuff they did. It's interesting because in L.A., we had the Chet Bakers, we had the Shelly Manns, and we had that L.A., I guess they would call it the West Coast sound. And these guys were in L.A. and they were playing kind of the New York hard bop thing, which is kind of interesting. And they differentiate themselves on the West Coast by doing that. And just great musicians, all four of them. What's interesting is that they all died, other than Stick Super. I'm not sure when he died, but, Felder and Henderson and Sample all died kind of within a year of each other back around 2014 or 2015 in that area. It's quite interesting. So anyhow, the Jazz Crusaders, one other record that if you can find it, this is called The Three, and it's Joe Sample. And along with Joe Sample on here, where do you hear the lineup on here? Shelly Mann, Ray Brown, and Joe Sample. This is on the Inner City record label. And Inner City always has been known for relatively good sounding records, if you can find them. They've all been, it's like a muse, they've all been recorded quite well. Inner City's a good label. This has been redone by a Japanese record label, I believe, called East Wind. And it's a real audiophile record, if you can find it. They are around and they're pricey. This is a great record, though, and you'll hear Joe Sample at his best, I believe, as a jazz pianist, along with the Jazz Crusaders on here. Really underrated band. That new record, again, Freedom Sounds, just came out. If I can grab it again here. It's a Blue Note Tone Poet. It's out. It's available at all your favorite record sources, whether it's the In Groove or Acoustic Sounds, whoever. It's really well recorded and really well done. I listened to both. There's no comparison. This new one sounds really good. Anyhow, enough about the Jazz Crusaders. I always try to put, I should say always, I try to put just a little bit of a classical spin on these videos now at the very end. And I'm going to do that today. It's funny. Today I was out in the truck and I was listening to the latest edition of Autophilia, which is a YouTube video done by a really great source for classical music, and you should check it out. I'll put the link below. And today, he was talking about British recordings, post-romantic, 20th century, whatever you want to call it, British recordings, many of which many of you probably have never heard of. guys like Frank Bridge and Bax and Butterworth, not household names, but great composers. Um, on a record label called Larita, known for quality and really a great sounding. I think they were bought by Decca, but you should listen to this video. I'll link it below. It just came out today, and it was really well done. It's funny because, again, I was listening last night to a symphony by Malcolm Arnold. Malcolm Arnold is a British composer who composed in the early 1900s. You may have seen his name around because he did a lot of film scoring. He did the scoring for The Bridge Over the River Kawi, the famous Colonel Bogey March. He did not write that. He he did the scoring. I think if you watch that, will remember it. It's a band standard for all high school bands. But very well-known guy Malcolm Arnold was. He was a trumpet player. He was the principal trumpet in the London Symphony for a while, some other symphonies, and then kind of gave up playing to compose. And he composed a lot of stuff. But, a lot of people don't know that besides his film score, that he did 9 symphonies. He's one of these guys. You had Beethoven and Mahler and Dvorak and a number of composers that wrote 9 symphonies prior to their death, and you can add Arnold to that. But for you folks who are jazz-oriented people and want to try to get into classical music, I really think Malcolm Arnold is a good place to start. Yes, he's not a well-known name like Beethoven or Brahms or even Mahler or Sibelius, any of these folks. But Malcolm Arnold, what a great writer. And I think his jazz background suited him well for his film scoring and even his orchestral work to a point. He claims that he heard Louis Armstrong in England, and that's what got him to play the trumpet. So he experimented in different sounds and tonalities and a lot of percussion, some dissonance, but just some beautiful writing. I would suggest, if you can, to pick up this set of his symphony works and dances. Again, the dances, to my knowledge, other than here, might have only been, on a record they were done on the Malcolm Arnold Larita record that Anthony Kershaw, who does Autophilia, referenced in this video that I'd like you to watch. The dances are on there. They're also on here, and this is done by the National Symphony Orchestra of Ireland and the Queensland Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Andrew Penny on Naxos. Superb sounding, really great sounding CD. Again, it's not vinyl, it's CD, but Naxos is really good. If you get this, or you can stream it, I'm sure it's on, in fact, I know it's on Cubos. Stream this and listen to the 5th Symphony. Begin with the 5th. It's a wonderful piece. It's only, I think it's probably about 35 or 40 minutes or so. The first movement is really interesting. The second movement is the slow movement, and it is almost like one of Mahler's adagios, like he was known for in Mahler's 5th, or Mahler 9, even 2, and 10 for that matter. But this slow movement in Arnold's 5th Symphony is just one of the most beautiful pieces of music you'll ever hear. I mean, it's just gorgeous. Third movement, it's interesting. He moves from some typical Arnold beginning in almost to a pop sounding middle part. It's just a great symphony. It's a great place for the jazz folks who are watching this to get into some classical music. Again, Malcolm Arnold, Complete Symphonies and Dances on Naxos, Andrew Penny conducting. Pick it up. I saw a few on eBay, pretty reasonable. I'm sure there's some on Discogs, and maybe even Amazon has it. It's not that old. It's really done well. Anyhow, that's enough for this time. This video. I thank you all for being here. We'll do some other things coming up here in the next couple days. Jazz Crusaders, man. Check it out. They're great players. Kind of an under the radar group. When you had all the Freddie Hubbards and the Art Blakeys and Cannonball and Miles and all these guys, the Crusaders are playing during the same period, and they're smoking. Anyhow, thank you for being here, and if you like what you see, subscribe. You'll be notified of the next video coming soon, and please like it. Talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye bye.